Hello and welcome. So just for some context, I feel like I should explain why we're doing this. So I've worked at SpiderGroup for nearly 2 years, and in that time I've learned tons and tons and tons from James. And when I speak to people about working at SpiderGroup, the amount of people that have told me James has taught them stuff or been a mentor to them is huge. So I thought, let's expand his reach somewhat, and rather than keep it all to myself, which is fun for me but not great for everyone else. So I'm going to do this, ask James some questions, and hopefully share his insights. So James, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. I've just closed my my email as well to try and stop all the beepy noises and stuff. So hi, James. I'm the founder and CEO of SpiderGroup. I'm also involved in some other businesses, some that I have sort of bought or merged with SpiderGroup, and one recently I set up from scratch, which is very exciting. And so I have been in business for 18 years now. Set up SpiderGroup when I was 22. I just finished a chemistry degree, and I didn't want to go up the corporate ladder. So I thought, well, might as well set up a business.
Make your own ladder.
Well, exactly. I would suggest probably I'm unemployable now. So that's the sort of thing a lot of sort of people that own businesses say, but I'd probably cope for 6 months, but then I would want to do it my way.
6 months? No way.
No, yeah, maybe not. Okay, fine.
Okay, thank you very much. So as we're doing this one in January, I appreciate it's the end of January, but I thought a good topic to talk about would be goal setting. Because I used to be someone that just kind of did stuff and didn't set goals, and I'm learning all about goal setting. So James, as a business leader, how important is goal setting?
So from my experience, goal setting is massively important. So there's quite a long sort of so SpiderGroup's been around a long time, and we always had sort of these goals about, okay, we want to get to this point, and years would sort of drift by, and you kind of realize that you were making some progress but not really going exactly where you wanted to go. And so you'd look back and go, wow, that was a crazy year, like so busy, and two steps forward, one step back, sort of the classic stuff, but never really felt like we had really gained much momentum in terms of getting to this really lofty goal. So one of the things that we've learned through reading and coaching and through experience is that you need to have this far off plan, but you also need to break it down into, say, manageable chunks. So for me, I kind of have a sort of a 10-year, 5-year, 1 year, 90-day goals, so that actually it seems much more achievable. So even a year goal can seem hard to break down in terms of, when you're thinking day to day. So breaking it down into a 90-day goal, makes a lot of sense, because you can almost just write out every day for 90 days and figure out what you want to do and whatever, although we normally do it based on weeks, and it just makes it much more manageable. I guess it's that classic, how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time type thing.
Yeah, plus we get to the end of the year and we don't just have, wow, that's been a crazy year. We end up with, hey, we've achieved these goals, because, each of us, if we do one set of 90 days for everyone in the management team, we each have 4 major goals that we've achieved.
Absolutely. And so also, one of the most important things around it, in my experience, is writing them down. So I think after the first year you'd been with us, we sort of were like, we've done a lot, but I don't remember what. And then we went back and looked at the list of all of the key goals we had, and we're like, wow, okay, we've achieved a lot of goals. And that's really kind of rewarding, because you get bogged down in the day to day at times. So yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was quite fun to look back, because I think at the end of my first year, you asked how I felt I'd done and how much I'd achieved. Like you say, when you haven't written it down, you just kind of go, I feel like I've worked really hard. Feel like I'm doing a good job, maybe. So now that we have everything written down, I can say, well, I achieved these goals by doing these actions. And so we use Microsoft Planner. And I know in our management teams, it's always quite exciting when you tick them off and you can see just the number of completed tasks going up and up and up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great because to look back for so we normally have a planner board per quarter. And so when you look back at the quarter and you can see that, we did 274 tasks in that quarter, you go, oh, okay, that's 274 little steps towards the goal, which is great. So the other thing as well about goals is there was a study that Harvard University did, which it's quite a long time ago, but it just kind of gives you an idea around it. So they did a study which was that so they asked people that are graduating whether they had goals or not, and whether the goals were verbal goals or were they written goals. And so they then came back and they sort of found the same people, and I think it was like 100 or 200 people that would sort of graduated. So they came back to them 10 years later, and so they so what it worked out was 84% of the class had no goals at all. 13% had goals but hadn't written them down, and only 3% had actual written down goals. And what they found after 10 years was that the 84% were doing okay. They'd had a Harvard degree, so they were doing okay. Yeah. But then when they looked at the ones that had goals, they found that they were earning something like twice as much money as the people that had actually got had no goals. But the crazy thing is the 3% that had written goals were earning 10 times what all of the rest of them were earning.
Okay, I need to write down more goals.
Absolutely, written goals is important.
If I write down my goals, can I please have a pay rise?
Depends if one of your goals is to get a pay rise, though.
Absolutely.
I'm sure we can discuss that.
Yeah, maybe not on camera. Okay, so that's really interesting, and we've obviously talked about business, but that sort of brings me on to my next question, which was, obviously you've talked about business goals, but what about personally? Do you have personal goals, and do you think that's important?
So yes, I do have personal goals, and I think that they are important. So I think for me, like the personal kind of drives some of the business. Mm-hmm. So what we do is kind of not in isolation. So one of the things that I kind of realized recently was that, so it's odd being your own boss and owning a company, because there's no one really setting your goal for you. Mm-hmm. So how do you decide what that level is? Like, where do you get your motivation from? How do you figure out, what to strive for, and ultimately how much effort and energy and whatever to expend? And so for me, actually, I realized when I started to figure out exactly what I wanted to achieve, so I turned sort of 40 this year. And so I guess before then I kind of was like, well, as long as I'm moving forwards, it's sort of all right in my personal life. But actually becoming a father, and like the children are getting to a point where I'm thinking like, oh, okay, what are they going to need later? So that's given me, a decent amount of focus in terms of goals and what to achieve. So actually the personal bit. So one of the things that I have is a personal vision board. And actually we get people in the organization to do that when they join, or as part of their interview process, is to help people understand what their vision is. Because if they don't have personal goals and a vision, then we can't really work collectively or, as a team to achieve them. So I think it's really important that people have their own personal goals, whether they are running businesses or, whatever they're doing in life. If they know where they're going, then they can actually set the direction of travel. They might not get there. I mean, clearly not all goals are going to be achieved. Some can be beaten or sort of smashed, but a load won't get achieved. But you're much more likely to get close to your goal if you aim for it than if you don't. And so it's that whole thing, isn't it, around, setting your goal to shoot for the stars, and if not, you might hit the moon. But if you aim for the moon, then you might, I guess, go into low orbit and then crash into the, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And I think, so I want to share because it still makes me laugh. So you got me to do a vision board relatively early on when I started, and you're already smiling because you know what I'm going to say. But you then looked at my vision board and told me it was woefully uninspiring. I may be paraphrasing, but the point you made was that it was all the next step. So I had a house, a new car, and an Oculus Quest, and small things that were actually relatively achievable. In fact, I bought the new car a couple of days ago. I'm in the process of buying the house, and I bought the Oculus Quest when lockdown started to give me something to do. So you were absolutely right. It was just the next step, which means as soon as you've achieved those goals, where are you going next? So I then, took the mickey a little bit, and my next one was go into space and conquer the atmosphere.
It's not terrible though. Like you did have the vision board, and you pretty much do have those things now. So it wasn't a waste of time. But
it was not a waste of time. But my vision board now has a much fancier car, which I think you'll appreciate because it's an Audi R8 Spider. So I go branded.
That's good. Definitely the branding.
Yeah. And a house with a view of the sea, and lots and lots of and a massive library. So those are things that it's going to take me some years to achieve because I'm not there yet. And I think I find that much more inspiring than my original vision board, which I did because I'd been told by my boss to make a vision board, and it's like, well, these are the things I want. Whereas now I actually have it framed above my desk. I can see it from here. I'm not going to show everyone because it's mine. But now when I sit down at my desk, I look up and I can see what I'm working towards. And that's what you were getting at the first time round. But I may have just paid it lip service to start with, but it's definitely.
It's the why. It's why do I do this? Why do I get up at 7, or why do I work and do this, or why do I put so much energy and effort into doing this? So just reminding yourself regularly about your why is what kind of keeps you sort of focused. So great book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, and it's like man will endure any amount of what if the why is strong enough.
So I know you've told me that one before. Did you know that is not actually Viktor Frankl's original quote? He is quoting Nietzsche.
Ah, is he? Okay. All right. So I didn't read Nietzsche. I read the Viktor Frankl book.
Yeah, but if you're having a session with me, then pedantry will rear its ugly head.
Okay. All right. I need to keep that in mind.
But frankly, Frankl, very good. Frankly, it is a fantastic quote, and I'd never once considered my why before I joined SpiderGroup. You get up and you go to work because that's how you pay the bills. It was never beyond that. I never really.
My anxiousness with that is that so as adults and humans, we spend a lot of our time at work. So we spend a third sleeping, a third playing, doing things that we need to do outside of work, and a third working. And so like if you're not going to work and like really enjoying and like achieving something which actually makes you feel positive and good about what you're doing, then that's not great in my opinion. So like having the goals and lining the vision and like I hope everybody in the companies that I'm involved in has a passion for sort of helping and achieving this overarching sort of goal. So for that reason, it's massively important that it's articulated, that everyone can get behind, so that people know that their contribution is going beyond just picking up a paycheck.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think knowing my goals, I can see how my job contributes to my goals and my life in a way that never really thought about. I mean, I worked for myself for 4.5 years, and that kind of worked in a way because my goal was to get up at 10 o'clock, not 7 o'clock. And so that helped. But again, it was never a long-term goal. It was next step goals. And so individual jobs kind of neither here nor there. Whereas now that I have long-term goals and I feel like I have a career that contributes to them, and frankly, the fact that you and Vicky, our COO, have pushed me to think about my goals means that I get much more satisfaction, because it's not just the bosses of the company going, these are the company goals, achieve the company goals. You guys actually care that we're achieving our own goals as well. And I think that's something I've not experienced, certainly not genuinely. I've had it paid lip service in a few companies, but certainly not genuinely. So your point about aligning the people with the company and everyone having goals is a good one. I like that.
Yeah. Cool. I'm just having a little look at.
Are you looking at the notes?
I'm looking at the notes to see what the next sort of question was.
So you have given a book recommendation, but my next question was going to be, so what are your book recommendations? Because you've got a book for everything, it seems.
Okay, there is. And so interestingly, this has come up a couple of times recently, so I actually have this out. Good to Great by Jim Collins. And so one of the bits that he talks about in there is around having BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. And it's sort of, I mean, again, they are like these bigger, longer term, challenging things that like goals we want to achieve, because they are inspiring to people.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is they need to be pretty simple so that everyone can understand them and get behind them. But actually they have a sort of a galvanizing effect on the team that sort of brings everyone behind them. So that's really great. The other thing that I was also looking at this in terms of was the economic engine. So this is something I was revisiting with my coach the other day, and that's the concept that there is a single sort of KPI or number, which if you manage and monitor helps you understand the performance of your business. So it could be profit per employee. Oh dear, I didn't turn off my alert. So it could be a profit per employee. It could be I'm just going to myself to disturb. That's the challenge with doing these things during the day when everything's going on.
Yeah.
So it's just understanding that really simple concept that everyone again can get behind. So it could be that your goal is to increase your profit per employee by say 10%, or it could be gross income per employee, or it could be profit per customer. It's like, so you can have goals around that as well. So that kind of makes quite good sense from a business perspective, is sort of having one of those economic sort of engine type goals. So Good to Great's a really good book. There's some really great concepts in there that you find come up time and time again. Yeah. So that's my main goal setting book I would recommend.
Okay, I should probably put that back on my list. My book list is long, and every time I see you, you seem to have another book recommendation, but you've mentioned that one a few times, so I shall accelerate it up my list, I think.
So it's also got a thing in there known as the hedgehog concept, which I'm not going to tell you what it is. So you're going to have to read the book to know about the hedgehog concept.
See, that's the way to get me to read it.
Absolutely.
Tell me there's something fun in there and then not tell me what it is. Okay. Cool. So Good to Great.
By Jim Collins.
By Jim Collins. Cool. Thank you. So one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit was something I learned very recently, which is about different types of motivation. And I think is quite relevant to goals, because there are two types of motivation. There's push motivation and pull motivation. And shout out to Kirsty Hulse, who is a brilliant speaker and coach who I learned this from. And push and pull motivation can kind of really influence how motivated we actually are and how long that motivation lasts. So push motivation is pushing us away from things we don't want. So it might be, I don't want to lose money. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to be overweight. Yeah, all those kind of things we want to avoid, we're being pushed away from. And it's a fear-based motivation. We fear being in that position, so we push ourselves away from it. But the challenge is, okay, so I don't want to be overweight. So I've lost a bit of weight. As soon as the weight's gone, I lost my motivation completely, which probably contributes to why people tend to put on more weight after they've dieted and have that yo-yo effect. Whereas pull motivation is the thing that draws us towards what we actually do want. And I think that's where the goals come in, because if I know that what I want is to be healthier, because let's face it, as you well know, my entire hobbies involve sitting down, and I am not an active person and I eat too much junk food. And I've never been that motivated to avoid my sedentary lifestyle. But actually, if I'm pulled towards being healthier, then there are lots of different ways to achieve that. I'm not just doing one thing. It's not starting from a negative place. So I think the goal setting is really interesting to, when you're doing goal setting, to not look at what you want to stop doing, but look at what you want to start doing, what you want to achieve, and pull yourself towards that, because that will last a hell of a lot longer.
Absolutely. I think so there's a lot of these concepts are sort of interrelated. So there's this thing known as the reticular activating system in the brain. And so it's the reason that when you decide you want a particular, you're going to buy a particular car, that in a particular color, you see loads of them around. It's that you're tuning your brain into a particular sort of thing that you want, or, and so thinking about how you focus on that's really important. So one of the things that works really well for some people is having affirmations. Mm-hmm. So positive affirmations about, I'm want to start being good at eating healthy, or I am going to be healthy, or I'm going to make healthy decisions, or thinking about how you so language is massively important in how you sort of embed that in your consciousness, which obviously you very well know, being sort of marketing and the degree you did. And so thinking about how you, I guess, adjust yourself so that you think about this sort of way of thinking is really powerful. And so, I mean, there is some other sort of interesting sort of things that then sort of go in with that. So in behavioral economics, there is a theory known as loss aversion.
Yep.
So broadly, you find that people are more loss averse than they are in terms of, so they don't want to lose or give up something when they have it, rather than gaining something. So sometimes thinking about how to adjust your goals to be positive, but also to tap into that as well. So this people are very complicated, I think, is what I've discovered.
Yes, they are. Well, like you mentioned, my degree. So I have a psychology degree, and it's a fascinating subject. And I'm definitely a loss aversion type person. I went to Vegas and I had to have a special budget for gambling, otherwise I wouldn't do it. Because I don't gamble, because this is my money and I have guaranteed money. And just because I could win more money, that's less exciting than the fear of losing the current money. So yeah, loss aversion is definitely a good one. But yeah, everyone's probably got different. So think of like a mixing desk with all the little dials that they're not dials. What are they called? The things you push up and down. So everyone's got different levels. So some people will have higher push pull. Some people will have higher loss aversion. And I think that the trick is, when you're doing your goals and your vision board and all that kind of stuff, is to work out your own levers.
Absolutely. So so there's a few books I've read actually which help with this. So I'm reading one at the moment which talks about easy change and hard change.
Okay.
And so actually this actually correlates reasonably well with the book you can see just here, Atomic Habits by James Clear. And so one of the things that they're saying is that you need little small bits you do, which are essentially casting a vote for the future self you want to be. So, easy change is something you can just go, right, I'm just not going to eat any food like that for a while. Hard change is saying that I'm going to change like my whole way I eat and my whole sort of types of food I eat to be healthier, rather than being kind of I guess exclusionary in some way, but how to balance things and sort of make that. So Atomic Habits is really great for sort of thinking about how to, like, how do you build your goals into sort of little small steps you do every time. So if you have to do anything like insanely big, unless you have an incredible amount of willpower, which willpower actually is a finite thing, you have a certain amount of willpower per day.
Yep.
Unless you can actually adjust your environment to kind of make it easier or more likely that you'll achieve your goals, then that's tricky. So I always had this discussion with Vicky, you mentioned earlier, our COO, who's my wife. And I always said, look, if we don't have chocolate in the house, we just fundamentally can't eat it. And therefore, we're kind of like, we're not having to make that choice. We're not having to use willpower at that point because we have a certain amount of it. And so that was interesting. When she read that book, she actually said, "I'm sorry, I should have." So I don't. Vicky doesn't say sorry to me very often because I'm never normally right, to be fair. But I said to her, "We shouldn't have chocolate in the house," and she then said, "Look, you were right. We should not have it." I mean, we have 3 children, so it's quite difficult not to have children to have chocolate in the house. But
you say that, but when I don't have chocolate in the house and I want chocolate, it's not a case of, well, I don't have any, so my willpower is protected. It's a case of Uber Eats do grocery delivery, or I could walk to the shop. And so I diminish my willpower even more by not having it in the house. But the finite willpower is a really interesting one. I remember reading a study that said if you have a big decision to make, or you have something that has to get done, don't use your willpower on anything else that day. So if you want to have biscuits for breakfast, have biscuits for breakfast. Don't will yourself into having porridge, because you've used up a little bit of your stock of willpower. So when you get to the point in the day where you have to do the thing that takes a lot of willpower, you've ruined it because you didn't have an extra drink or biscuits for breakfast. You may be able to guess what I had for breakfast this morning, because that's the only example I can think of. So yeah, if you know that you're going to have a day where your willpower will be stretched, don't try and forego an extra helping of chips or anything. Just give in to your basest urges. Maybe you're not your basest, but give in to some of those urges, and preserve your willpower for the important stuff.
So I think
that's my excuse anyway.
No, I think it's a good excuse. So basically, now you just said everyone eat whatever you want for breakfast or for any meals. Yeah. Then I think, so if we sort of tying it back to the goals, having a goal is great, but you have to do things to make that happen, and they might be small or they might be big, but it's a question of sort of figuring out, how do I adjust my life and everything I'm doing to create the best chance of success? So like Steve Jobs and his turtleneck tops always just wore the same thing. Then he wasn't wasting one of his sort of quota of decisions per day on what to wear in the morning. Just always wore the same thing. And I can definitely get on board with that. Not
with the wardrobe thing. I'm too variable, but I totally get it. So so I think you know this, but one of my goals is to have your job. And funnily enough, this activity here, where I make you teach me things just so that we can teach other people, is one of the steps towards that goal. I am consuming all of your knowledge.
Good. Well, so the most important thing I can do is to give my knowledge to as many people as possible, and then they can do my job, and I can go and do other things. That's a very odd thing that some people don't realize in life and in work and whatever. Is if you hoard knowledge, then you're the only one that can do that, and therefore you will always have to do that. If you can give everybody your knowledge and help them develop to be able to do all the things you can do, that means you can do other things.
Yeah, so I get your job and you get a golf course, or a helicopter. You want a helicopter?
Helicopter, absolutely, yeah. So I need to learn to fly a helicopter.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems like a win-win to me.
Absolutely.
Okay, so my last question for this is, what are your top 3 tips for goal setting?
Okay, so I guess the first one, I guess really, we sort of touched on this, is to understand what your why is.
Hmm.
So understand where it is that you know, why you want to get somewhere, and therefore it then makes it easier to figure out how to get there and what you need to do. So the why is really important. And that kind of sort of links into, you need to be passionate about it.
Yeah.
So make sure your goals are passionate, that you know your why. Um,
Yeah, I think when we did a session with the whole team and we talked about people's whys, it was really interesting hearing the different whys everyone in the company had. You know, some people, it was very much about helping others and they were very focused on doing something that would make a difference. There were a couple where it was making connections, and, you know, making other people smile, just bringing joy, which did mean I felt a bit mercenary when I said my why was I would like lots and lots of money. And until you reframed that in a much more positive way, which, if I remember correctly, was my why is financial freedom. I never want my bank balance to define my life. I want to be able to do whatever I want to do. And what I want to do might be working, it might be sunbathing. But I want that decision to be based on me and not how much money I have. And therefore, I need a lot of money because I have a lot of things I want to do.
so it's just fundamentally about choice for me.
Yes, yeah, and
So
that
when you
made me
have,
feel better.
yeah, indeed. Like, so if you don't have money, then you can't choose to do the things that you might want to do. Whereas if you've acquired a certain amount of wealth, then you can choose whether you work today or whether you, I don't know. I mean, obviously, the choices are somewhat limited for all of us at the moment,
Right now,
being
yeah.
part of the being in lockdown. But ultimately, choice is important. So yeah, so being passionate is really important. So another thing that is really important in terms of goal setting, and you probably hear this all the time, all people do, is to think about them in a smart way.
Yeah.
And that's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound.
Though I have heard relevant instead of realistic, which I
Okay.
personally prefer, because I always felt that realistic was pretty much the same as is it achievable. Whereas relevant to me ties it into those sort of 10-year, 5-year, 1-year goals that you talked about. Um, so I'm on a mission. It's a very small mission that I've done nothing about, but I'm on a mission to get people to use relevant instead of realistic in SMART goals.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that campaign starting soon.
Yeah. Oh no, I've got to do stuff now.
No, you do, absolutely. So you've made it a goal now.
I
See what
haven't.
you did
It's not
there?
smart. It's not smart. It's
No,
okay.
that's true. So I mean, I guess the rationale behind this one for me is obviously having like, so when you look back, you then will know whether it was actually achieved or not.
Hmm.
If you say, I want some money, like if I gave you a £5 note, is that enough? Do you now have money? But if you were to say, I want to be able to, I don't know, I want to be able to go on 6 weeks holiday a year, and I want that to be abroad, and therefore it's going to cost me some amount of money, and I want to, you know, you starting to form it. And then part of that though is, as you're thinking about it and whatever, is you're also setting your reticular activating system to be focusing on what you want as well. So, you know, it's very easy to say, I want something, and then not really to come back to it. But
Yeah.
actually by going through that process, it's useful.
Okay, so if my goal is I always want to turn left on a plane, um, is that smart?
No, not really.
No, it's not. It's measurable, but it's a bit pointless because some planes actually you go through business class and you still have to turn right. Um, but also it's not time based. I've got is it achievable? I don't know. I haven't said how I'm going to achieve it, so it's not smart, but it's just a goal I like to have.
Absolutely. So doing that's important. So I'm trying to think what the third one is. So passionate, smart, and I guess I don't know.
Would you like me to refer back to what you said when we were putting the notes together?
Yeah, go on. What was that then?
It was, don't limit your goals to what looks possible now.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's something I really had to learn. That's why I had the next step vision board, because those were all things that were possible. And what I've learned from you and Vicky and from the coaches that you work with is that my fear of failure is something that I've never really confronted. But if you don't have the big, hairy, audacious goals, you can't fail to achieve the big, hairy, audacious goals. You also can't succeed at them either. And so by limiting your goals to what looks possible now, you're only moving a little way forward. Plus, technology and stuff. That was one.
Absolutely. I mean, they it was assumed that we'd never ever be able to see an atom because it was too small. And science has proven that whilst you can't see with the naked eye, we absolutely can see atoms using electron microscopes and things. So I think I always find this a slightly odd one for me because I generally feel like everything's possible. I know this is really dumb, but I really like the quote from Pirates of the Caribbean from Jack Sparrow.
Okay.
Where he says, "Nothing is impossible. It's just highly improbable."
Okay, I thought you were going to go with I think it was Dolly Parton. It may have been Marilyn Monroe. But it was, "Nothing is impossible. The word itself says I'm possible."
Okay, I like that one as well.
I thought you might like that one. I find it a little cheesy because there's also an apostrophe that they haven't taken account of. But,
not the apostrophe again.
But actually, I recently finished a book called Everything is Figure-Outable. And Vicky found it amusing because, knowing how I feel about words, she didn't think I'd read a book with a made-up word. But actually, it really stuck with me that, if you have a belief that everything is figure-outable, then you can go much further. So I am repeating that to myself, and I'm not even wincing when I say the made-up word now.
Very good. It sounds very cromulent.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent.
Well, thank you very much for that. I hope you've enjoyed it. I have, and I hope at least my SMART goal is for 4 people to watch this.
That's okay. We can definitely do that. We need to send that per one. But thank you very much. Thanks for organising. I think so. We've got more of these planned, haven't we?
So 1 a month, unless 400 people watch it and clamour for more. So yeah, my 4 is a pathetic goal. I thought you'd pick me up on that. I'm going to go for 400, clamouring for more.
Like everyone has to start somewhere though in these things.
Yeah,
but you absolutely can achieve way more than that.
Yeah, I mean, we can get my mum to watch it at least.
True.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and looking forward to the next one.
Thank you.